Can you imagine what this big tent would look like? It would be like a wedding where both sides hate each other and they're ready to exchange gunfire. This is not a happy big tent situation. Let's do Schumer. Here's what's really going on with Tim. First of all, right out of law school into government, he's never had a job. This guy's never had a real job. He's never made more than $200,000 a year. Whatever he makes now, 180, I think, as a senator, and he's worth millions. I don't know how that happened. But he's never had a real job. And so what he's terrified of, despite being in his 70s, is getting voted out. Because there's a very good chance that AOC is going to come in. She's going to eat his lunch. And all of a sudden, he's going to be like, whoa, wait a minute. I got to throw myself on the open market here. He is a lawyer, but he's never practiced. So he's worried about that. The other thing is that he goes out the door that way. He goes out with his reputation in tatters. Why? Because he helped groom all of this stuff, all right? He has been part of the Democratic establishment that has been feeding the shark, hoping to get eaten last, all right? Now, let's move on to, Angie Nixon here, because she's part of that. I know she's trying to walk away from it and everything else. We've all seen the stuff on the Internet. You don't walk away. The Internet's forever. We all know that. She's DSA. She is part of this new guard. And you know what? What's happening now is the old guard, whether it's Schumer or Beshear in Kentucky, they're all stalking the DSA, begging for a date. They're all like, guys, big tent, come on, we can get together. Come on, we'll just go for pizza and a movie. They want nothing to do with you, all right? They're like, Schumer right now is great. You'll notice he's like the old guy at the end of the bar in a toupee who's wearing clothes that are 40 years out of date, who's eyeing up the young women coming into the bar and going to wander over and go like, hey, the pickup line is, have you heard the new Doobie Brothers album? It's really boss, all right? They want nothing to do with you. Forget the big tent. They don't want to burn the tent down. They don't even recognize the landscape that the tent is pitched on. And so as a result, there's no commonality there. He right now, Schumer, is worried about being out of a job. It's not any deeper than that.
What do you predict, Jessica, is going to happen with Chuck especially, and the whole conundrum that Paul's laying out, where he created Frankenstein's monster that are now seeking to dethrone him while he simultaneously supports them in it, weirdly?
Well, I certainly think there's a strong chance that Chuck Schumer doesn't run for re-election. He'll be 76 years old. It's a perfectly reasonable time not to run. And yeah, if AOC wants that Senate seat, I think that she'll be able to get it. Maybe Pat Ryan jumps in. It would be an interesting contest of ideas there. But you are ignoring another side to what's happened in this cycle vis-a-vis Chuck Schumer, and that he recruited Roy Cooper in North Carolina, who's lapping Whatley, Sherrod Brown in Ohio, and Mary Peltola in Alaska, who was hesitant to run. So he has had some wins on the board. Obviously, what happened in Maine and Michigan was not what he intended. People are focused on ideas more than they are on labels. Florida, I think, remains a pipe dream for Democrats. I think that Alex Vindman losing is a blessing in disguise, because we won't necessarily be spending, tens of millions of dollars there, and we can send it to Georgia and Texas and Iowa. Oh, I should note that Chuck Schumer backed Josh Turek as well. But I think that there's a contrast worth paying attention to between what we're hearing from even Angie Nixon, who you said she's DSA. She's been DSA for like about 60 days, identifies as a capitalist, as a small business owner. But she was asked about whether joining.
Cafe.
Okay. Yes, she's a resist lib. Okay. Yeah, put her in jail. She was asked about whether joining the DSA is a distraction. She said, you all are the ones who are distracted. I'm actually going out talking to voters about the things that matter to them. The fact remains that there are people who are dying because they don't have access to quality health care. That is true. There's one party that wants you to have health care, and the other that doesn't care has been promising us a plan for like 10 years at this point. Then you have the vice president today in Ohio. We rolled this clip where he's talking about Sharia law. The more important stuff he was talking about was quality of life. He says, we're finally seeing the American dream of home ownership accessible again to young people. The average age of home ownership just hit 40 years old in this country. Mortgage rates are up. Construction is down. That's directly related to the war in Iran. And then he also said, I believe in November we'll face a choice. Do we demand a government that serves us rather than the fraudsters and the criminals? Do we demand that the American president fight for the American people first? 70% of Americans say Donald Trump isn't focused on lowering costs, doesn't care about people like me, and 70% say that his businesses influence how he makes political decisions. He's made $2.2 billion. J.D. Vance is describing his own government, the fraudsters and the criminals, and Americans will vote based on that.
How quickly you forget Doge. and how quickly you forget the resistance to Doge and all the credit. You guys were destroying Musk's cars over Doge because he was finding all of that fraud, and you guys tried to destroy his company.
He was also firing all the scientists, everyone who knew something, and then had to beg for them to come back.
California just passed a law against Nick Shirley.
Yeah.
I mean,
Jesse.
Those are immigrant-run businesses, Paul.
Well, I'm with Paul here. You know, Schumer is going to lose his big fancy office and his big fancy title no matter what happens in November. He needs Maine and he needs Michigan. Abdul and Troy the logger are not his guys, but he has to back them, and it's emasculating. Cocaine Mitch would never do this. Remember Kerry Lake? Kerry Lake came at Mitch, and Mitch told all the donors no checks to Kerry Lake, and she lost. Schumer can't do that, so he has to pretend to love Abdul. So it's Jewish, Muslim matchup. I'm enjoying watching this very much, although Donald Trump does say that Schumer's becoming a Palestinian, so it's a little bit of a wash there. Abdul has a lot of energy, we'll give him that. But there's a lot of drip, drip, drip. He has to look like a patriot. And every time you hear him talk about Sharia law, white supremacy, and his mother-in-law financing jihadists, allegedly, you think this guy's not cut out for the Senate. This guy's not cut out for this country. Now, Schumer's got a lot on his hands with Ange. Ange backs reparations. Ange wants to take away my health care and give it to Fauci. Ange is for price controls. Ange is a lunatic, and she's got a mouth. Ange says that ICE is going to start killing blacks. Ange says she won't work with Republicans because they want to kill her. Ange is all this, she's running on hate. And you got to run on love, Jessica. And the voters can tell. You could want to change America, but you have to do it and come from a place of love. And we know when you're coming from a place of hate, and we know when you're coming from a place of love.
Like a Muslim ban, a place of love.
We needed to. There was terrorism all across the country. You remember Barack Hussein Obama's administration?
And it wasn't all Muslim countries, but that was a good way to brand it as a Muslim ban, even though there were Muslim countries that weren't banned.
Go ahead.
Okay, you know what it's good to remind people what Trump's support was like. He had a lot of weird and odd people who backed him, and we called it a pirate ship because even though everybody was different, they all rowed in the same direction. Big parties opposite. They aren't rowing in the same direction at all because they don't have ideas. They just have identities. Now they're paying for it. The normies are in trouble. They can't differentiate themselves. They can't say they're common sense because that's Trump's path. Here's the problem, the bigger problem with Big Tent, okay? You got a small group of super far left fanatics who want to tear down everything. But there's a much bigger group of regular Democrats who don't, okay? So if you welcome the radicals into your tent, some will join, but then some normies, they're going to leave. That was what was happening in 2016 to 2024. So the net change is the radicals who join minus the normies who leave. And all you need is a few regulars because it's such a large group. Even a small percentage who leave, the party's going to end up smaller. And it will end up smaller. Trust me. Gaining a few intense radicals is not enough to make the loss losing the larger number of normies. It's like somebody deciding to add X-Lax to the office candy bowl. Pretty soon, everybody's going to start bringing their own snacks from home. So this is a pattern for Democrats. I love patterns. It's like women's sports and locker rooms. You know, the original purpose was fair competition based on biological sex. That was diluted. The female athletes leave. Protestant churches, do you remember when they used to be traditional? Then they incorporated far left positions. Membership dwindled while traditional churches, as you see, flourish. So whenever the left decides to allow the elites, kind of the elite fringe in, mainstream falls apart because the mainstream groups need boundaries to create cohesion and meaning. And once you insert people who want to upend the norms, the normies feel betrayed and then they disengage and they leave. Another example, Daughters of the Revolution. Can you destroy them? Yes, you can. By allowing trans into Daughters of the Revolution. They can't be daughters. In fact, that's a complete betrayal. You let them in, Daughters of the Revolution, actual members